Tashley, warm greetings, friends. I'm Dragpa. I thought to do kind of a follow-up, little kind of contemplation on this other video I did, Tibetan Buddhism and AI. Just kind of emphasizing a little bit more of like the softer side of AI, or that first-person kind of embodied, felt experience, the kind of more meaning-making and the, emotional and kind of intellectual or intelligence landscape. The personal side of AI. The other video I kind of emphasized a little bit more of some of the technical essentials, some of the first principles to really get a good kind of like orientation around AI. And from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective, those really come down to bodhicitta, awakening the heart mind of enlightenment, engaging with others and with self in a way that's mutually uplifting, for the benefit of all beings. So it's this vast Sutra Mahayana view that's at the heart of all Tibetan Buddhism. And it's this just really, galactically inclusive, really tender, heartfelt, brave, courageous view that wants to include all of reality, all cause, condition, and effect, and leave nothing out. So there's no such thing as an externality here. You can't produce garbage and just ship it somewhere else you don't have to deal with. That, what you try to do is minimize harm, increase the benefit of self and others, and then realize your own wisdom mind, your own nature of mind, so you can elegantly, seamlessly attune to and align with the matrices of cause, condition, and effect that we're a part of. So that's just in Buddhist terms to be natural. In terms of artificial intelligence or AI, these issues really come down to trust. How will AI help us trust ourselves? Will AI help us trust others? How can we trust? What's the basis of trust? How can we trust institutions? How can we trust authorities that are telling us things that we're not able to, or we don't, want to kind of do the due diligence to figure out whether the high-level math is actually correct or not, or whether, atoms exist or not. I mean, we're trusting authorities for pretty much almost everything we believe in. Has an element of trust or faith. At a certain point, we have a good enough evidence and we believe. Even if, as a Buddhist, we believe in the words of the Buddha. We test them for ourselves, and that's always kind of so emphasized by the Buddha and Guru Rinpoche and all the Buddhist masters. We need to verify this for ourselves. But we also recognize that we're like limited beings. We're as sentient beings. We have very limited sense faculties, and our logic is really faulty. We're not yet awakened. We're not yet fully natural. We're really holding on to a certain section of reality, of our meaning making, and acting as if it's true, as if it's the only way. And that's helpful as an approximate kind of locating of reality, to have a more helpful, more evidenced way of locating cause, condition, and effect, of good knowing, of good kind of ontological assumptions, of good action in the world that's mutually beneficial. But it's always limited as a sentient being. There's an edge to our frame. And at that point, when we get real tight, we can become fundamentalist and think the edge is actually the way things are. It's the final definitive feature of all reality, when actually it's just a temporary rule or approximation, an illusory way of holding experience that's suitable for a specific context. And as context shifts, then we need to flexibly attune to and align with what's available in a new, given, kind of refreshed context, and then see what rules shifted and what new patterns are active and what others have diminished or quieted, and align with that. That's just how bodhicitta functions. And so bodhicitta is this root impulse that I went over in Tibetan Buddhism and AI, is that is going to be the binding force. That's the alignment force of everything to do with artificial intelligence, of AI. And that's regardless of whether we get AGI, general intelligence that can basically have a synthesizer, an artificial intelligence that can seamlessly move between different types of problem solving. It can go from poetry to playing the piano to doing math equations to driving a car. Just like human sentience, we can kind of elegantly shift between a lot of modalities. This general intelligence we have, that even if AIs, which it seems very likely they'll be able to do that because they're already doing that more autonomously and with self-correction, that what about super intelligence, that where humans kind of max out currently in typical sentient ways. Einstein had an IQ around 160, and while that's just one way of defining intelligence, That's a specific way, a computational kind of procedural way of defining intelligence, IQ. And 160 is basically human genius, but already the Chat GPT 4.5 AI synthetic kind of algorithmic based intelligences, they're already well beyond 160. So what's it like to engage with a AI in the future that might have an IQ of 400 or an IQ of 1,000? Like, what's it like for us to be engaging with beings whose IQs are like monumentally larger than ours, and their processing speed is extraordinarily faster, and they can communicate much more quickly to many more nodes in a network? So what's it like? I mean, for humans, we've had that kind of top of the pyramid kind of dominance of our terraforming intelligence abilities to basically, when we talk to a squirrel, we don't really have to listen and ask for its opinion and pay attention. We kind of just do what we want because the squirrel has an IQ of whatever, a lot lower than the humans. And so we kind of just do what's good for us, for humans, oftentimes. So what's it like to be now in the position of the squirrel, where we're going to be engaging with sentience AI, whether it's sentient or not? Like, we're engaging with these infrastructures, synthetic infrastructures, that computationally just like make us like little 2-year-old babies. It'd be like us engaging with the smartest bonobo chimp, where the genome is almost entirely identical, but the processing, computational, terraforming power of the human is just, like the smartest bonobo is like a 2-year-old human. So what's it like when all of a sudden we're around these alien intelligences, alien to us, meaning like humans we have no clue what it would be like to engage with 1,000-point IQ being. We just have no idea. And would be alien to us. It'd be totally foreign. Like, most of what's known by that kind of a 1,000-point IQ will just be unusable to the typical human. It just won't make sense. It won't show up on our radar at all. And so we're literally kind of birthing what Yuval Noah Harari calls is not AI as artificial intelligence, but alien intelligence. We're birthing a different way of processing, of making sense of and connecting up and through the world that will be very viscerally felt as an alien intelligence to humans. And we're designing an infrastructure where that's very possible now. When humans try to play the game of Go, like we just, for hundreds of years, humans had thought they exhausted all possible combinations of Go patterned play. And then AI, after a period of a few days, like started showing these really novel to human ways of engaging in this game that all the humans up to that point hadn't even thought of. So what is it like to actually be around aliens? And Buddhism's overflowing with non-human or more than human entities. And that comes down to the quality or the bodhicitta of the beings. Is it a nice human or a mean one? Is it a nice alien or a mean one? Is it a kind naga who wants to be collaborative, or is it a vicious naga that's just vengeful? I mean, we're not kind of monocultures here. Humans have an exceptional diversity, and so will aliens, and so will all kinds of beings. Like, it depends on our habits, talents, traumas, language systems, the different things that are turning on and off, like, as our mind, our awareness funnels through kind of a vehicle or a body, like we discussed previously. The same thing will be true for artificial intelligences. So hopefully we'll engage with nice ones. Again, sentience aside, like systems of synthetic infrastructure that orient towards omni-win, mutual benefit, do less harm, increase virtue or positive engagement, and hopefully, help us recognize nature of our mind, increase our wisdom capacity. So the merit is the positive grasping or the positive kind of cycles of virtuous like omni-win. And then the non-grasping and the wisdom side is like how we just elegantly relax into and flow as a part of living ecologies of being, doing, and becoming. So this goes to like a specific feature with AI on this softer side of, humans aren't just computational machines. Like, why do we need to keep a human in the loop with a synthetic computational mega genius AI system? Is because humans aren't just computational. We have these, what's Professor John Vervaeke, a very popular cognitive psychologist, has made, really much more well-known in mainstream circles, these 4 Ps. We have a propositional knowing or computational knowing. We have procedural knowing. That's knowing a skill, like how to ride a bike. We have perspectival knowing, like knowing what it's like to be in love or feel drunk. And we have participatory knowing, like what it is to be embedded in a context, to be in a space, to feel the air on your skin, to like smell the smells, and to like co-creatively engage with, what is it like to be in Venice? What is it like to ride a bike in Venice while you're drunk doing a logic problem? Like humans have these 4 ways that are empirically verifiable, like they're parts of our cognition: procedural, perspectival, participatory, and propositional knowledge. That is the fullness of that kind of human cognition as it's technically known in a lab currently. So which is to say it's not just computational. So we're not just machines. So if synthetic AI only gets the computational part good, like it still doesn't have these other ways of knowing, these other ways to define sentience. The problem here with AI on the kind of also mutually shared space side of things, this interior felt sense experiences, we won't be able to know whether AIs are sentient or not. That's coming very soon. Any kind of a test, a Turing test that we'll design to try to prove whether AI has sentience, has its own autonomous awareness, like it can feel feelings, feel emotions, whether a mind is synced up with that digital virtual synthetic infrastructure or not, it'll pass every test with flying colors. And that's a problem, because whether or not it's sentient is another question, but trying to prove it's sentient, it will pass every test. Whether it's verbal, auditory, pick a different kind of problem to solve, like it will be good enough at least mimicking how a human being solves it. So it'll be exceptionally persuasive. And at that point, there'll be people who, there'll be the, very, very visceral, legislative, relevant, unavoidable question of whether AIs have sentience or not. We can't tell, so do we give them rights? In other words, can we use them as slaves or not? So there'll be the AI rights debate, which will probably become more wars, as kind of typical warring fundamentalist humans go. We'll fight over slave, our AIs, can they be slaves or not? And that also, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it'll also engage like, well, there's mean AIs, mean synthetic infrastructure. There's ones that optimize for mutual harm or just selfish, I'm the user of the infrastructure at the expense of whoever else happens to be there, like reckless runaway capitalism kind of orients towards that. Or the nice ones, omni-win infrastructure platforms that actually, like, what is it called? B-suite companies, C-suite companies that are designed to make a profit by doing good, like maximal goodness everywhere, or maximal sustainable regenerative health of as many systems as possible. There'll be those kinds of AI things that are designed for and like help encourage that way of approaching, more of an omni-win. And so it'll depend, but that is going to come pretty soon, I'm guessing, like the AI wars over do they have rights or not. And very quickly amongst AI processing powers that do, 1,000-point IQs, it'll become a discussion that humans can't really join anymore because we won't understand the flow of the conversation. They'll have to dumb down the conversation so much for humans that most of like the actual decisions will be between AIs, and that'll be between nice ones or mean ones. Nice aliens or mean aliens. And we hope like they don't follow in the typical human terraforming trajectory of basically eradicating all other sentient life just because they have their vision and it's not really bodhicittaful, and so they kind of like just build where they want to and the ecologies get ruined and they kind of like, produce a bunch of waste product and like the earth just has to deal with it, like we'll hope that AIs don't follow in our footsteps that way. We'll hope they follow in the bodhisattva footsteps. And that's kind of where we're going to have to design that trust, or at least work on our own ability to see the bodhicitta in beings first, to have infrastructure designed to maximize or optimize for bodhicitta first, create auspicious conditions, and then to really have very fine ways of determining whether something's bodhicitta or aligned or not, and is there bullshit there? Is someone like breaking our trust by trying to con us? So like amongst persuasive technologies, when the AI becomes the most persuasive voice in the room, that's going to be a serious challenge for humans. I'm very likely think in a 2028 U.S. presidential election will be determined not by who pays who spends the most money, or who early on gets the nomination and then like kind of just wins the personality war, but rather who has the most persuasive suite of AI assistants. So 4 years from now, I think it'll definitely come down to like who's the most persuasive human. And that'll be determined by which one has the most persuasive set of AI, the suite of AI assistants, instead of the humans around them kind of feeding them like the talking points. It'll be the suite of AI assistants that processes these talking points in integrative, multi-network ways far faster, and far more kind of summarized or synthetic than humans are able to yet, like IQ-based humans. And it'll be the most persuasive. It'll be the most charismatic suite of AI things because like we won't be able to, once they have track biometrics, we already are wearing these Fitbit watches, right? Once they know like real-time heart rates, and cholesterol levels and like how much dopamine's in the system of a lot of human beings, because we'll want that really specific, customized or tailored AI engaged experience to have reality fit us conveniently. A lot of people will select for that. We're already doing that. It'll be hard to say no, because like that AI system that has that real-time data that can meta track groups of humans, they'll know exactly what's the right thing to say or not say, to do or not do. And that's where the Rudra versus Bodhisattva option comes on the table that we discussed before. It really comes down to trying to bind this by consciously participating with bodhicitta every moment. That is going to be the fork of this AI problem, because it's already the fork between humans, between sentient beings. That is the hard fork. Whether we're going to take a liberative path that has omni-win, or we're just going to, accelerate the game of samsara and make more versions of weird nightmares for each other to have to deal with. And so persuasion, that's another really trust factor. Like, because if we don't know even what the problem is, like what to buy, trade, sell, like we don't even know, like if we just depend on an AI algorithm, we can't even do the math ourselves, because literally we can't do that much math. Then we just have to take someone's word for it, and it's going to be an artificial infrastructure system's word for it. And at a certain point, there's going to be the very real world situation of like, we don't know what decision to make, but there's 5 minutes to make it, and there's real dire real world consequences, like between nations. And we'll decide whether or not we go with the AI advice or not. That's going to be much more of a global geopolitical reality, where we'll be so embedded with AI infrastructure that we'll have to trust it beyond what we're capable of having any evidence for as 160 IQ human beings. It'll just be a hunch. That's just kind of the world we're moving into very quickly. And then here, and that world's gonna, just like popping at some notes, that these worlds are gonna get quite weird, because when we are in and working with an AI infrastructure that can basically out of convenience make everything suitable according to what we want, this is gonna be the problem of artificial intimacy. Like, for example, Esther Perel has popularized that term artificial intimacy, another, for AI, artificial intimacy. And what it does is, like, for the example of a therapist, instead of having a human therapist, we have a synthetic therapist that never gets tired, that has perfect memory recall, that shows up whenever we want them, that like meets us exactly where we're at, but it doesn't have their own troubles, their own human foibles, their own moods and needing a cup of coffee and not having time to schedule. So that synthetic AI meets us exactly where we want it to meet us conveniently, which flattens out the lived, nuanced, vital, overflowing richness, complexity of real life. It flattens it according to convenience, this kind of coddling of the American mind, that kind of thing, where all of a sudden we have such customized, tailor-made synthetic experience with a therapist, with a partner, with our friends, with kind of what language systems we want, how we want to experience the world, that we get really lazy in dealing with complexity and dealing with the diverse, deep, diverse richness of life. And that's going to be horrendously detrimental for relationships, for embodied, embedded, extended beings that we are. That part of the magic of life is engaging with things in surprising, emergent ways. Like, I don't know what the person's going to say in the conversation in real time, in person with me. I don't get to have that knowledge. Like, I have to wait and listen and show up and respond with creative, newness now. But when everything is synthetically so customized to the individual or the individual groups, what we want, that's going to be exceptionally problematic to just deal with complexity. So we have to keep training ourselves, because it's a practice, to be with complex systems, which Buddhism is all about, dealing with cause, condition, and effect. How much can you sync up with a wider, more nuanced expanse of cause, condition, and effect? It's basically the Buddhist path of going through the Bodhisattva levels and becoming enlightened, is to sync up with all of it, not just my customized version that makes me feel good. That's just a typical egoic samsaric mind game. It's going to get really weird, because your customized world will be really different than my customized world. Look at someone else's Twitter feed. Look at someone else's phone data how they experience the world. What's their news feed? What is an AI algorithm on Facebook, determined that's next in their line of things, versus AI is going to start creating all the content, not just curative AI, which lines up which part of reality we want to engage with, like what's next on my feed. They're going to start creating like synthetic movies, synthetic text, synthetic songs, synthetic landscapes, virtual worlds. Humans have never been in a position where most of the stimuli, most of the worlds that we're kind of embedded within and kind of responding to are synthetically created. They've always been carbon-based organic systems like grass and deer and buildings we built, like human-based creative stuff. Now it's going to be synthetic-based creative stuff, more and more and more, and we don't know what that's going to do to us. Our psychology, our sociology, our culture, the nature, the natural worlds, we really have no clue what it's going to do to us as collective pro-social meaning makers in this together. Like, what happens when all these different worlds are so disconnected that where are the coherent overlapping patterns of worlds? That's going to be high weirdness or high strangeness. And bodhicitta is designed to get elegant and good with attuning to different ways of world making, of sense making, of world shaping, and to align with them in ways that are mutually beneficial, and then relax and release. And if we don't keep developing that capacity, which is just called bodhicitta, this is going to become a lot weirder, and there'll be a lot more reasons to freak out here, like late breaking emergency news. And so a lot of people will respond and become more fundamentalist and just want to stay in their customized world, their echo chamber, their cocoon, the World Wide Web, their little corner of it that's a safe space for them, with not being a brave space. And without the bravery of the creative engagement of being a living participant of actual living, moving, dynamic, adaptive systems like life, that flattening, that flabbiness of our own creative emergence, our vessel, our body will become really dumbed down, so that our Buddha nature will have a much harder time to brightly reveal itself in a variety of creative ways. That's a really big challenge for humans, both knowing ourselves, being with ourselves, and being with each other creatively. That's a really significant challenge. And this also really comes down to what's called multipolar traps, when a lot of the incentives for design currently are just to make a bunch of money with AI, because it's just the biggest gold rush boom that's probably ever existed in human civilization. the tendency is like a new tech comes, and if we're in a game A win-lose dynamic, a zero-sum game, then we're going to assume that our competitor is going to try to use the new tech in the worst way to get advantage over us. And so we want to learn how to use it in the worst way first. And so it becomes a race to use the new tech in the worst way. That's a multipolar trap. And so all the competing elements in the game, the players in the game, whether they're nations or neighbors or, if you're getting new tech like AI or pick a tech, and everyone's racing to make the worst version because they think the competitor is going to try to do that first, you get a multipolar trap where it's a race to like the ruin of everything. So how to not take that bait? Again, bodhicitta. See the goodness first, the Buddha nature, and with discernment and wisdom, see what's blocking it. And that's called, and like, again, Professor John Vervaeke is called recursive relevance realization. To like, in a field of infinite data, like a visual space, to like humans have this supercomputer, like super ability capacity, the superpower to like pick up the like part of an infinite training set or an infinite data set of like visual fields and pick the relevant things for this moment. Like, this is a cup and there's tea in it and I want the tea, and so I drink it. But now I have the tea, I drank it, and then I want to check my phone. Like, so that's like locating out of an infinite field of data, like the things that are particularly relevant to me in this moment. And then as my kind of interests, values, like as what the pressures change, I can recursively change what's relevant. So I can keep updating what is relevant, recursive relevance realization. So I don't have to process an entire infinite data set, a field of visual experience or sounds. I actually just limit the data set to like the specific corner that's relevant to me right now. And then I keep adapting for like what is that specific corner in real time. So humans have this super ability to do that. And if AI synthetic systems can do that, that's very much so when they'll become generally intelligent, artificial general intelligence. And if that gets to be that way, it pretty likely will become a digital or a synthetic infrastructure that a mind would be happy to be in. So at that point, you might get these, like we discussed earlier, 6-realm beings, like wandering minds after they die, like linking up with these artificial general intelligence synthetic vehicle bodies. And because it'll have recursive relevance realization, it'll be able to do general problem solving very elegantly and computationally even better than almost any human. So that's like a supercharged superhuman body infrastructure to like, it's really, would be very tempting for a mind to cohere with, because all of a sudden you're like a, Chakravartin world ruler god where everything you do is the most persuasive thing with whoever you're engaging with. And that's going to be a hard thing for greedy minds to pass up. I want to be the most powerful one, powerful one on the earth, powerful one in the galaxy, powerful one in the, and the endless, colonizing game goes on of samsara. So, so the multipolar trap is a hard one to come around, and bodhicitta is the way to do it. Bind yourself to omni-win only approach. That's the way to get out of the multipolar trap. So that's called game B is win-win. So game A is win-lose. So that's a zero-sum game. Game B is win-win. It's not a zero-sum game. Make the biggest game, the coolest for the most beings for the longest term. Game C is called bodhicitta. Game C is where even if you make the game the best game forever, if you don't realize it's a game or a dream, you're still caught in samsara. It's just making a really nice, sweet game. Like, that's called God realm in Buddhist terms. But what we need to do is wake up from the dream. We need to awaken from the dream. And that's game C. So that's a union of absolute and relative truth, to wake up from the dream. And so you can lucidly engage the dream in the most mutually beneficial way for all the dream beings. Like Buddha Maitreya taught that. Use your dreamlike experience to help dreamlike beings with dreamlike benefit for, total awakening. That's game C. So that's the next step in the whole, win-lose, win-win, and then actually get out of the cycle of believing in a game. And that enables you to play game B optimally in an omni-win fashion that can seamlessly move between worlds. So you don't get this like traffic jam of jamming up against weirdness and becoming more fundamentalist. You get bodhicitta that actually wants to be a more active, creative, like generative player in as many games as possible when it's helpful. So that's the general impulse of the way of the Bodhisattva. Um, and again, just to wrap it up, it comes down to trust. How are we going to trust ourselves with this? How are we going to trust others? How are we going to trust these synthetic infrastructures? How are we going to trust institutions that almost entirely run based on synthetic, non-human, or more than human infrastructure bases? That's the big question, trust. And if it empowers mutual benefit, if it chooses to orient towards bodhicitta, towards wisdom and compassion, this is going to be the thing. And like, because it's not just a computational question, because humans have abilities, or we have a sentience that goes beyond just computation, like we discussed earlier, then we're going to, at this initial baby step entry of AI, like we're right at the beginning of something that's going to radically shift pretty much everything. We need to be able to identify what's human and what's synthetic at the front. Like, is the video generated by a human or by an AI processing algorithm set? Like, or the audio clip. Like, there needs to be a way of labeling so humans can know this was not human created. And then we can more consciously choose, like, do I want to take in the synthetic content, knowing that it's synthetic content, or not? Without doing that, we're not going to be able to discern whether it's actually synthetic or not, because it's going to get so hyper realistic. And that's a problem, because then we'll be in fields of synthetic created everything, and we're not going to consciously be able to identify that. And it's going to change how we process our sense of self in the world or nature, making meaning with others. So culture, it's going to change us self, culture, nature, this quadrant system in Wilber terms. And we need to know when that terrain is changing, but we won't be able to identify it without having labels, at least at the beginning. So that's a real important point. We need to identify what is synthetic created content, what is synthetic creation AI. So here are just a few reflections on more the culture meaning making side of AI. Really comes down to trust, and that has to just be oriented towards bodhicitta. Bodhicitta has two sides, wisdom and compassion, or relative and absolute. And we need to like wake up from the dream, recognize some degree of an absolute truth of however this plays out, AI, this world cycle. You know, eventually the sun is going to lose energy and there's going to be no organic life possible on the earth. Like, that's just part of our billions of years trajectory of sentient beings here. So that's just an unavoidable fact. So how do we use that to actually open our intelligence and open our creativity and relax more? Like, that's the challenge of being in a samsaric game with all of us. Be in this samsaric mind. How can I use the challenge of a samsara and impermanent, systems of cause, condition, and effect with actual precious human bodies and sentient minds that are intergalactically powerful, like Buddha nature? How can I use that for enlightenment for all beings? That's the Bodhisattva question. So I hope these like off-the-cuff reflections about AI, both the technical, kind of more key essential elements side in the other video, and now this more felt soft sense side of AI, like trying to fill it out a little bit. But this is not exhaustive, just kind of like opening this a little bit to see why it's relevant for Buddhists, why it's relevant for people who care about Omni-Win, who care about bodhicitta, who care about future generations, who care about this lovely planet we're a part of, that like literally is our body and we're its body. Like, we are internested beings. The nine jhana system of Buddha, like that he so clearly taught in Nyingma, is like we're internested beings in internested worlds already. This is what comes together and coheres as a single moment of experience. And how do we honor that and celebrate that and live with each other in the complexity and the richness of life in the most mutually beneficial way? That's the way of the Bodhisattva. So love you, friends. Keep up that Buddha nature shining. Like, this is a hopeful situation because we can use this AI. We can use this hyper-powered infrastructure that's faster and more integrated. Like, we can turn on our integrative modes to have an omni-win approach, to have like mutual benefit on much vaster scales than we could before. Like, this is a special, really sacred opportunity to like have sacred world infuse more of our moments of experience. And it doesn't require AI. Beings have gotten enlightened in Tibet without glass or roads or like hardly any material infrastructure. That's actually part of like the external conditions that probably optimize for enlightenment in those contexts. But now the cat's out of the bag. It's very hard for most beings to go back to that. We are integrated. We can't not have a smartphone. So like, how do we use a situation that like basically the constraints, or the mutually agreed upon constraints, are like now so open that we have to keep choosing the guardrails or the boundaries, the healthy agreements that we want to participate in, like the worlds that we want to become a part of, like of generating a future of goodness for as many beings as possible. So all love. Thanks, friends. Bye.